We are going to call to order the City of Sherwood Planning Commission meeting for March 24th. We can have roll call, please.
Chair Simpson,
Here.
Vice Chair Griffin,
Here.
Commissioner Flores,
Here.
Oh,
Commissioner Walker,
here.
Commissioner Meyer,
Here.
Commissioner Pearson, and Commissioner Copper is absent.
And just for clarification, it is not March 24th as noted in this agenda. It's April 14th.
An amended agenda was posted, but you
I
didn't
did
do
not
that.
replace my packet, so we are now teleporting to April 14th. Thank you. All right, moving forward. We have before us a consent agenda, which consists of the March 24th Planning Commission minutes.
I make a motion that we approve.
All those in favor of approving the consent agenda, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Approved. Council liaison announcements. Council President Robinson.
Thank you. The only thing I really have to report is that we are thrilled that we have a full planning commission, and welcome Mr. Flores and Mr. Meyer. We appreciate you serving. We look forward to hearing from you on the medical marijuana dispensary that you have before you tonight, and we are prepared to address your recommendations at a public hearing at a special meeting. We've tentatively scheduled, and that has been publicly noticed, so we are able to do that meeting as a special meeting on the 28th of April. That will be the first reading of the ordinance that we consider, and then the second reading will be at our regular meeting the following, I think, May 5th. So thank you for all your hard work on this.
That is so that on the 28th, we might be able to pass it. Is that what you're
We
thinking?
will not pass it on the 28th because it'll be a first reading. But on the second reading, we will hopefully pass some legislation, and it will have an emergency clause so that it becomes effective immediately.
So we do have that little couple days regardless.
A couple days.
All right. So, and we can address that during the public hearing part of the medical marijuana dispensary, what that means and the timeline. Okay. And then staff announcements or commission announcements regarding our new members. Did you want to do that under your staff announcements?
Again?
No, go
Oh,
ahead.
there it is.
I'm here.
Thank you. And so, yeah, tonight we have two new members with us. Chris Flores comes with us, and also Mike Myers. Is it Mike or Michael? Do you prefer? Either one is fine. Okay. Oh, and no S. I'm sorry. So Mike Meyer. So they will now join you on the commission, and we do have a complete commission, unless of course Commissioner Pearson wins the seat on council that he's running for, and then we will fill
Yet
another
another
vacant seat.
position.
But that's okay. Couple things I wanted to talk to you, I guess, to just get some things out of the way. Your statement of economic interest, if you have not filed that, those are due tomorrow. If you have any questions about that, you can contact Sylvia Murphy at the city recorder. You can contact me and I can get you in touch with her. Kirsten needs your code books to change out some code language that has now been codified. I will let you know that you remember you just passed a big package of code edits. That will come out in a couple months when they reissue, and so we'll have to again ask for those code books, but that's the life of a code. I wanted to real quick on Sherwood West just touch on it. We have talked to 60 different property owners out in Sherwood West. Connie and I have actually either gone out and met them individually, or they've come into the office and we've spent some time with each one of the property owners out there. We're having really good outreach with those folks, and it's really awesome. And you'll learn through the process that there's a lot of old Sherwood residents or property owners out there that have been in Sherwood, have gone through the school systems in Sherwood. Their kids have gone there. So it's a lot of neat history that's going on out there that we're looking forward to sharing with you. We will be having our public forum with Sherwood West on May 21st. It's tentatively scheduled at Edie Ridge in the cafeteria where we met and our first public open house. Hopefully basketball is not going on at the same time.
Please.
So I am
Yes.
working with the school district to make sure that's the case. If it's not at Edie Ridge, we'll just move it over to Laurel Ridge, which is right next door. And we'll put notice out here soon on that. And then I think Councilor Robinson stole my thunder, but I just, again, for the public, April 28th will be the special hearing for council on this matter before you tonight.
It? That's easy.
Thank you.
All right, community comments. Community comments are limited to those items that are not already on the agenda this evening. And if you intend to testify or speak under community comments, we ask you to complete one of the blue cards that's in the back. See no one reaching to hand me a blue card, I will move past community comments. The medical marijuana dispensary here.
Can you just wait? You could hand it in now and we could see. Oh, yeah, something different otherwise.
Okay, so, and if you do plan to testify on the public hearing that we are having, we ask you to fill out one of the blue cards and turn it in to the Commission Secretary, Kirsten. And there's also a green sign-up sheet in the back, so if you're not already on the email notification for the Planning Department, you can sign up on the green sheet in the back and your name will be added to an email notification. Staff will confirm something with an email and then you start getting email notifications when something gets posted to the planning website. So, seeing no official community comments, we will move to our public hearing. And I have a script that I need to read. The Planning Commission will hold a public hearing on PA 15-02 Medical Marijuana Dispensary Code Amendments. The purpose of this hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to testify and provide information to the Planning Commission concerning PA 15-02 Medical Marijuana Dispensary Code Amendments. The Commission will conduct tonight's hearing in the following order. Staff will present the staff report, followed by questions, if any, by the Planning Commission for staff. We will then open the hearing for public testimony, and each person's time will be limited as follows. The applicant will have 30 minutes split between presentation and rebuttal. Persons in favor of the application will have 4 minutes each. Persons opposed to the application will have 4 minutes each. Then there'll be rebuttal opportunity from the applicant, which is the remainder of their 30 minutes. We will then close the public hearing. There will be final comments by staff up to 15 minutes. There'll be questions of staff, if any, by the commission. Discussion and deliberation will follow by the commission. If you wish to speak, please fill out one of the testimony forms and submit it to the recording secretary. The Planning Commission chair will recognize people who wish to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the chair. When you come to the microphone to speak, please state your name and address for the record, as this hearing will be recorded. We need you to press the push button for 2 to 3 seconds until the red light turns green, and then speak clearly into the microphone. The Planning Commission is making a recommendation to the City Council on this matter, and the City Council is the final hearing authority, and they will hold their own public hearing, and the notice of that hearing date that we present tonight will be the second notice, because it's also been publicly noticed for the hearing that is tentatively set for April 28th. The Planning Department will now present the staff reports. Yes. It is scheduled if we finalize our hearing and make a recommendation formal tonight, if we're able to make a decision, correct? All right.
3 seconds.
Yeah, she just told you how to do it.
I-
Okay, Julia, we all fought it.
Okay.
New microphones.
So tonight's hearing, should the Planning Commission forward a recommendation to the City Council to amend sections of our zoning and development code in order to regulate medical marijuana dispensaries within the city? So I want to give a couple clarifying points. Tonight's hearing is not about recreational marijuana. The state rules aren't in place yet, and we will be seeking public comment during the time once we get a little firmer idea of what the state regulations are going to be concerning recreational marijuana. And the council has indicated in previous work sessions that we're not going to be considering banning medical marijuana dispensaries outright because that would likely face some legal challenges that we don't want to be tied up in court with and that expense of that resource. So to give you a little history of the medical marijuana action in the state of Oregon, in 1998, the voters approved the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act, and that was for caregivers as well as card holders were given the opportunity to obtain medical marijuana from growers, so to speak. And then that went on fairly unregulated until 2013, where it required dispensaries, medical marijuana dispensaries, to register with the Oregon Health Authority. During that time, there was a gray period where some dispensaries were put into effect or opened their operation without any formal regulations in place. So this firmed up those regulations. And in 2014, Senate Bill 1531 authorized local jurisdictions to regulate dispensaries by imposing time, place, and manner restrictions in their operations, and it allowed local jurisdictions to have a moratorium in place that expires on May 1st of this year. And Sherwood did indeed enact a moratorium, and that's the timeline that we're dealing with for regulating medical marijuana. So the statewide medical marijuana dispensary land use regulations that were put in place, a dispensary must be located in a commercial, industrial, mixed-use, or agricultural zone. They can't be at the same location as a grow operation. They can't be within 1,000 feet from a school, a public or private, or any other dispensary. Background checks are done, and they must be a registered business in Oregon, and a security system must also be installed, and dispensaries can't be mobile. So how the school zone buffer looks on our local zoning map would be this map. You can see that the schools are in the darkened blue areas, and the 1,000-foot buffer is the lighter area surrounding them. So the properties that are colored would be the areas where dispensaries would be allowed for the state regulations. And those zones in our code would be the general industrial, which is the deep purple. The lighter purple is the light industrial. The deep red is the general commercial, and the orangey color is the retail commercial. The fuchsia color is the office commercial zone. So during the course of evaluating whether the city wanted to impose any more restrictions than the state regulations, we conducted some public outreach. We had a public work session on March 10th where the Planning Commission had an opportunity to meet in small groups with citizens and get their take on regulating medical marijuana dispensaries. We had an online survey that ran from March 6th to the 31st. We generated over 180 responses for that. The details are found in your staff report of the results of that as well. And staff met with the Police Advisory Board on April 2nd, and they came up with some additional thoughts on regulating medical marijuana dispensaries. So the proposed code language includes some amendments to the code that added a medical marijuana dispensary definition. We added a mobile vendor definition found in the code, specifically Chapter 1610. We also added, based on the public outreach that was done, a restriction on zoning, limiting the zones to the general commercial, retail commercial, general industrial, and light industrial. Restricting within our commercial zones, the office commercial and the neighborhood commercial zones, and in the industrial zone recommended employment industrial as a restriction to the zoning. Added restrictions to, or putting some buffers in place, the public outreach indicated a preference for a buffer around our public parks. And you can see on the map there, those added buffers are in the light green, the 1,000 feet surrounding our public parks, as well as our public plaza, which is downtown here. And so that map reflects where the permitted tax lots that would be allowed for medical marijuana dispensaries in the proposed code language, the colored areas. We also heard that a type 2 land use process was the recommended course, which is a staff level land use decision. It's reviewed under a special use category with a 14-day notice to property owners within 1,000 feet where they can comment on the proposal. It's published at 5 locations and posted there with any appeal of the decision to a hearing officer. We added within the special use category special language that would be reviewed under this type 2 process, adding criteria that regulates time, place, and manner restrictions with hours of operation, buffers, and various security measures. Also, an important component of this is the registration and compliance with the Oregon Health Authority regulations under ORS 475314, which is the Oregon Medical Marijuana Act itself. And so any violations of the OHA rules are a violation of our development code, as anything would be by code enforcement would then regulate that. So the Police Advisory Board had some additional recommended language as well. They recommended limiting the land use zone to the industrial lands only, both general industrial and light industrial. They recommended reducing the allowable size of a dispensary to 2,500 square feet. The current proposal calls for a 5,000 square foot limit on the dispensary size. They would allow the dispensary to remain open an additional hour than the proposed code language to 7 p.m. during weekdays, and they requested that there be an added definition for a public plaza. In looking at what other jurisdictions have done in regard to zoning, and this one shows different buffering, you can see that there are quite a few different regulations coming to light, especially concerning the buffers and choosing which zone to place dispensaries at. Specifically in regard to Tigard, the retail, they're restricting it, requiring it to be along 99W or Main Street for the retail marijuana, and they're regulating both at the same time. With respect to the hours of operation and other regulations, you can see the limitations there. A couple of other jurisdictions reduce the size limit of a dispensary. You can see to 3,000 feet in size. And Hillsborough added another buffer, a further buffer from dispensary to dispensary. So with respect to Tualatin's dispensary, which affects us most directly, this map illustrates a tax lot that would be located on the fringe where industrial property, a Tualatin might place a dispensary would be an allowed use, and that's what a 1,000-foot buffer looks like in reference to our industrial land. So that's the state 1,000-foot buffer requirement. So no properties in the shaded area would be allowed to have a dispensary within our jurisdiction regardless.
Are they there already?
No, that's just to give you an example.
Okay.
That's an example of should one come to play. Those are two different places.
If they have one already in their purple zone there, then we wouldn't be able to do it. Then we would increase our buffer in the yellow. Is that what you're saying? Or regardless?
So the orange, sorry if this is a little confusing. So if Tualatin approved a dispensary in their industrial zone, that's in orange, the dark. The 1,000-foot buffer for a dispensary is 1,000 feet. So that yellow is the 1,000 feet buffer.
Theirs.
And that would be the impact. That's our eastern edge of the city's boundary, and that's in the dark purple. That's in our general industrial zone. So that would be a state regulation that says you can't have any dispensary within that area.
So whoever has it first would then, the other person couldn't have it within 1,000. It's
That
not.
would be correct.
So,
So staff recommends the following proposed code amendments. Add those definitions, add medical marijuana to the use category in commercial and industrial, place medical marijuana dispensaries under a type 2 process, add the criteria for medical marijuana dispensary in the special use category with the hours, the added buffers for parks and plazas, and the additional security measures. What you have in front of you this evening is the staff report with the findings and the recommendation. Exhibit A has the proposed code amendments. Exhibit B are the final rules for medical marijuana dispensary program, the OARs. Exhibit C is the Police Advisory Board recommendation. Exhibit D is a citizen comment we received regarding hours of operation. Exhibit E is Chief Gross letter regarding time, place, and manner regulations that he is recommending. And Exhibit F is the school and parks buffer map of Sherwood. And with that, I'll take any questions at this time or wait and ask that we open and hold the public hearing at this time.
Right. So before we open for public comment, are there any questions of staff regarding the presentation provided?
Just want to point out that from news reports I've read, Tualatin apparently is committed to that industrial area that you highlighted in orange is basically the only place they can put it. And since the state mandates that they have to have at least one, that's where it's going to go. So, in fact, they haven't built it yet. Doesn't mean it's not going to be an opportunity for anybody who wants to start a business if they get someone to lease them the land and the building, et cetera. That's where it's going to be. And for intergovernmental friendship relations, I think we should kind of assume that that's where Tualatin will be.
Okay.
you were talking about the, can I look back at the hours, the cities versus the cities?
Mhm.
I just want to look at that again. Or is that in our packet?
No,
think it
that's
is.
some new information that's just in the PowerPoint.
Turn it on.
Some of them, okay. Just went through those a little fast, so everybody's got them, okay. I guess we can I would probably look at those again when we're deliberating, I think. Just wanted to see something on it.
Okay. So any more questions of staff regarding the presentation before we take public testimony? So we are going to now open the hearing for public testimony. I would ask that if anybody would like to speak in favor of the application, that they bring their card forward. And if you could bring them to the commission secretary, we can get them put together ahead of time.
Or against at this point. Just hand
And
them
this, you can turn in either for or against, and we will sort them out and then call in order. Okay. Thank you. So we have Anthony Bevel. And just, again, you'll have to hold the push button down for about 3 seconds, and then your name and address for the recorded record.
Anthony Bevel, 17036 Southwest Lindley Way, Sherwood, 97140. By looking at this map up here, it looks like you have a fairly easy job because it shows that it is in a pretty refined area where you're considering putting dispensaries. And that brings me to the point of, that word dispensaries, plural. How many actual dispensaries do you foresee coming to Sherwood? I mean, I don't see, one coming on every corner. So to me, this is a big, non-issue. I mean, it is medical marijuana, the key word here being medical. So it's going to have to be prescribed by a doctor, like a doctor would prescribe oxycodone or any other, narcotic, which, marijuana isn't, but it's a non-issue. And I would ask you to, really give it a hard look beyond just this area here. And that's all. It's a non-issue. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Sherry Ralston.
Hi, my name is Sherry Ralston. I live at 21029 Southwest LeBeau Road in Sherwood. And I put together the hours of operation information for you. I've been attending several of the city meetings lately just to get an overview of how each city is thinking about how they're going to put things together. And of course, some of them have already voted on it. What I wanted to say is there are currently over 101 medical marijuana dispensaries currently being ran in the state of Oregon. Some have been open for several years. Some have been open for a long time. You don't hear about anything from them in the paper of issues or problems. You don't hear about them on the news. They've been running efficiently and quietly this entire time. So just take that into consideration when you think about those hours of operations. Most of the medical marijuana patients that I know work. So to have it open until 8 o'clock would be consistent with what many of the cities are voting now and with what many of the dispensaries are open currently. In fact, on the east side, there's several that are open till 10, a couple that are open 24 hours a day. The state regulations allow that. I think 8 p.m. is an appropriate time to close. And so that would be my suggestion. And I am a medical marijuana patient myself, so I frequent the dispensaries, sometimes just out of curiosity. I also have an application in for a dispensary here. So just take that in consideration.
All right, thank you very, oh,
Can I ask a question?
yes.
The thought behind keeping them open till 8 o'clock, again, to catch people after work and that kind of thing, and I know that the Police Advisory Board discussed that a bit. I don't know if you had a chance to read that, but they were talking about trying to catch each of the 3 different work schedules that someone might work in. Did you think that it needed to be open past 8 o'clock on the weekends for any reason? Or just
It would,
7
well,
days
it
till
would be
8 o'clock?
great if it could be open until 9 o'clock on the weekends. It seems like, I don't want to speak out of turn, but it seems like the medical marijuana dispensaries, the time frames seem to be similar to a liquor store time frame, even though it's really ran like a drugstore. I have my personal opinion on the hours, and then I have what I think customers would prefer. Yeah, it would be nice to have Friday and Saturday night a little bit later.
And I think a lot of the areas have done that, and I kind of wondered why, if you're just trying to serve people when they're not, kind of at home from work, or what the reason was for staying open till 10 o'clock on Friday and Saturday if they have all
I
day.
didn't ask those questions when I was talking to a lot of the dispensaries. What I did find out, though, is there's one dispensary over on the east side that's open 24 hours a day, and he's really busy late at night because he's one of the only ones. Kind of like there's one Walgreens around here that's open 24 hours a day, and the rest of them aren't. So anybody that needs help after those hours are all flocking to that particular store. 8 o'clock during the week would be great. 9 on Friday and Saturday would be wonderful. But you have, what I put together of what most cities are doing today.
Right, and then you had said in your research that you had contacted them and they were busiest from
They're
after 4.
some of their busiest times are between 4 and 8 o'clock.
Okay.
So just food for thought.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you very much. It is not too late. As long as you can run that blue card to Kirsten, we are good to go.
So do I still need to push this? No, we're good to go.
As long as it's green,
So
we're good.
my name's
Go.
Dave Porch, 15836 Southwest Willow Drive here in Sherwood. I'm really late to the party, and I'm sorry about that. I had no idea we were doing this. In fact, I reached out to the mayor to try to get some information about a ban that was done over in LeGrand where they banned marijuana dispensaries.
Mhm.
And I thought, well, that's a great idea for my community of Sherwood. But apparently this bus is pretty far down the road here. So anyways, so I saw about this hearing and I thought I'd come, and I have more questions, which this probably isn't the forum for questions. They're probably answered in that booklet, I'd assume. So somehow I need to get to that and get my questions answered. But I just want to make the comment that I heard on the radio that the state of Washington was retracting all of their medical marijuana licensing because they've approved regular marijuana dispensaries, right? So you know, you have to kind of think, well, will that happen here in Oregon? And I'd probably have to guess yes. So it seems maybe this would be futile to go down this road to pass all this legislation to allow a dispensary here in Sherwood, only for it to have its license pulled and then become a legitimate marijuana retail establishment. And if I could just ask one question, Alan, you made a remark that, as you said, gosh, I'm sorry. Well, you said that there has to be one dispensary in every city? Is that how it works?
So we're gonna have, oh, sorry.
I'm sorry, but in the very early on presentation, did you not say, Michelle, that we, at least one,
We just can't ban them.
we can't ban them?
Doesn't mean there has to be one, but we
Well-
just
Well, you
can't ban
can't
them.
ban them.
Well, that we're not specifying in the code that there has to be one,
Right, that's
or
what I
or
think
two, or
you
three,
were
or 5,
questioning.
or 100, but we can't ban them.
Right.
But there was a moratorium until May 1st, which Sherwood participated in
Correct.
out of some
While we figured this whole
choice.
thing out, right?
Right. But I mean, this has been in effect since 2010, right? This medical marijuana law. So we've been part of that moratorium for 4 or 5 years.
We
Are-
can have
are-
staff revisit the timeline, because I think the timeline was shorter than that, and
Okay.
and
Well,
if you want to ask your questions, and then we can
Yeah.
answer, we can have staff answer. We are very happy to
Okay.
do that, because we don't want people leaving. I don't know if they put the timer up. There's
Gotcha.
4 minutes, but ask the questions, and then we'll put together
Thank you.
we will answer your questions if we're able to this evening.
Yeah.
So I have on there how the state of Washington and how medical marijuana dispensaries, how that ties into recreational, because we've asked those questions. And
Yeah.
like you said, coming in late to the party, it's hard to know the discussions that's already been had. And we've asked those questions of staff, and Michelle has explained it to me very well previously. So the other question is whether we're required to have one in our community.
Right.
And so we can have staff answer if it's a requirement that we cite one here.
Okay.
And was there another question?
No, somebody mentioned a statement of economic interest. I assume that's in that packet.
The statement of economic interest is a requirement for any public official to turn in a form to the state of Oregon. It doesn't have anything to do with the medical marijuana dispensaries. It has to do with a public official reporting where they receive their income to the state.
see.
So
Okay.
it's outside of this hearing process.
All right. I'm good. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you
we'll
for
have-
letting me speak.
No problem. We'll have staff help answer
Okay.
and clarify those, because if you have those questions, I'm sure there's other people that have similar questions. So, Michelle, if you could help clarify comparing medical marijuana dispensaries and the action we're taking tonight on how we see it impacting recreational marijuana, and comparing it to what the state of Washington has done. And then I think the quick answer is, are we required to cite one here?
Okay.
So is that,
Are we done?
I don't have any more blue cards. Does anybody else like to testify as proponent, opponent, or neutral to this matter? All right, then we will close the public hearing part of it and have staff answer the questions, and we'll go into deliberation.
So first, with respect to coming late to the game, you're not too late. We are going to have a couple more hearings at least before the city council. There's an opportunity to catch up, and I'd be happy to talk to you offline with any questions that you have. Just call the planning line, or as well as a lot of information is also available, all of the reports and things. So take a look there. The hearing is April 28th. With respect to medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, it can get really confusing because of the recent passage of legalizing recreational marijuana. The medical marijuana is regulated by the Oregon Health Authority, and the recreational marijuana is regulated by the Oregon Liquor Control Commission. And currently, they're not planning on merging either one of those agencies. Each agency will regulate their respective marijuana, so to speak. The medical marijuana dispensary program has been in place since the fall of 2013, with final regulations coming as late as this past fall. In 2014, March of 2014, the House Senate bill passed where they allowed states to, or local jurisdictions to regulate time, place, and manner regulations, and they also allowed local jurisdictions to pass a moratorium limiting, allowing a moratorium that expires on May 1st of 2015. Now, the issue of banning gets into some murky legal territory. On one hand, we have a strong ability, a local home rule principle, which allows local jurisdictions to really make a lot of regulations regarding whether to ban medical marijuana dispensaries, for example, if the state rules didn't actually explicitly say, local jurisdictions, you can't do that. So it's right now being litigated, a couple of cases of jurisdictions that have decided to ban medical marijuana dispensaries, and that could be tied up for several years in court. And the city council indicated early on in this process that they really didn't want to go down that road of facing any legal challenges should we decide to ban medical marijuana dispensaries in our community. So taking another approach, we decided to, the council directed us to take a look at what the communities, the local community wanted to do, establishing time, place, and manner regulations concerning medical marijuana dispensaries. And we will tackle recreational marijuana shortly after we get done with this issue, and we learn a little bit more of how the Oregon Liquor Control Commission is going to be regulating recreational marijuana and dispensaries. They are required to start accepting applications for four types of groups in January of 2016, but it doesn't look like that they will be issuing licenses for retail till probably 9 months after that. So we do have some time to put some regulations in place that are best for our community. The hours of operation. Oh, the OLCC has given guidelines for liquor regulations, and the only ones in place are, the state rules are that they need to be open at least 8 hours per day, and it's up to the discretion of each individual operator of what hours that they want to open beyond that or within that 8-hour time period.
That's regarding the liquor stores.
That's
And
regarding liquor stores.
The reason we mention it is because when we were crafting hours of operation for medical marijuana dispensaries, we were trying to look at some form of guidance to say what's a reasonable hours of operations, and comparing it to a liquor store, that's what we were looking at.
Oh, okay. So right now, as we discussed a little bit, the legislature is working on laws currently, as we speak, concerning medical marijuana as well as recreational marijuana. There are a couple of bills in play where they would be combined, allowing recreational marijuana to be sold in medical marijuana dispensaries. That, according to some experts, I guess in a recent conference that I was at, that's not going nowhere in the legislature, and that's likely to fail. So they won't be, that won't be merged at all.
But we don't
In
know
the
what the
short term.
legislation's
we don't
gonna.
know. I have no
we can't
crystal ball
control the
right now of
legislation.
how they're gonna come down.
So just to recap in like by layman's terms, the medical marijuana dispensary became a city of Sherwood topic in March of 2014 when the state of Oregon allowed local jurisdictions to regulate time, place, manner. And at that time, we were allowed to put in place until May of this year a complete moratorium to give our community time to do research. And we are at the end of that research to say, okay, we now are able to, with our local home rule, put together something for our community. And that's how we got here. So.
And wasn't it actually July that they're giving licenses for recreational? I mean,
July, it's personal use.
oh, okay.
Who knows how you're going to obtain any
Okay.
recreational marijuana, but
Because there's no.
Okay.
there's no place to get it legally.
Got it.
So it
Okay.
will. Okay, so recreational marijuana aside, we have it before us medical marijuana dispensary code. And so there are two versions of this code. One is the original staff recommendation, and then there's a revised one that was brought forth by the Police Advisory Committee. And if you're, I guess I'm going to open up to the commission for discussion. If you're going to point to one, if you could just reference the page number of the entire packet, because there's different page numbers throughout the packet depending on which exhibit number it is, but the very bottom number is the whole packet number, and then we could all be on the same page. So at this time, does anybody have any questions, comments, general statements about the code as presented?
Chair Simpson, if I could make one other clarifying point.
Absolutely.
I forgot to mention the idea of the number of dispensaries.
Oh, yes,
That
thank you.
also is something that really hasn't come into review legally, whether we're required to have one or any certain number. So there could be a possibility of facing legal challenge should we say you're limited to just one dispensary. I haven't come across a jurisdiction that has done that approach. I don't know, maybe Chad could speak to that a little bit of how that would be difficult to enforce and regulate.
If you regulated the distance from other dispensaries, given this, just the linear feet available within the city of Sherwood, you can't have 7 of those. We just don't have that many square feet of acreage available in the allowed uses. So
Right.
by
But potentially you could have 2, maybe 3, and if we get it out into retail and all that. Right?
if as presented, you could cite them correctly, there might be enough spacing for 3, or 4. So,
Yeah.
and if we increase the limit from 1,000 to 2,000, then
I think the easiest way to think about this is that under the state law that applies in this situation, it allows you to create reasonable time, place, and manner restrictions. So any challenge to what we're imposing would be a challenge to whether or not that is reasonable. And if we can demonstrate that given the size of our city and given the population of our city, that we can have 1 or 2 dispensaries and that's more than enough to serve our city, then we'd have a very strong argument that those are reasonable regulations. If we impose restrictions so broad that it basically is a ban, so nothing can locate there, then I think we hit the unreasonable point.
right, but
But
looking
with
at
the city the
Hillsborough-
size of Sherwood, I think you're exactly right. 1, 2, 3 is probably more than enough to serve a city with the population that we have.
And Hillsborough having already expanded to 2,000 feet in Washington County to 3,000 feet, it's reasonable to say that within our neighboring jurisdictions, the buffer zones between dispensaries has been expanded, and we would not be outside of a reasonable.
Yeah, the only thing that I would suggest there is that you don't necessarily want to look at the number of feet that another jurisdiction is doing, because obviously the size of that jurisdiction could be different, as well as the zones that they have. You know, their commercial zones or industrial zones could be bigger than what we have here. So really what you want to do is you want to look at the map that staff has provided to you and say, okay, based on these restrictions, here's areas where they can be located. And is that a reasonable number given the size of our population and where they can be located within the city? And if we think that's defensible because it's reasonable, then by all means, I don't think you're going to have a legal problem.
Okay, that helps. All right, that. All right, so anybody want to jump in first, or we all know that I made notes and have comments, so I mean, it's not a surprise. I'll start with one easy concern that I had, and it had to do with on page 63. I have to say from the beginning, I appreciated the extra work that the Police Advisory Board put into looking at this code language. And I was ready to just, look at what they were doing and try and, most everything they said made sense. My one concern had to do with page 63, their definition of a public plaza. I don't know if I guess my concern was the way they defined it, it looked like they also defined the open area next to Rose's restaurant, because that defined some open spaces that we have put within other areas of our community that wouldn't. So a square in the city or town, an open area located near urban buildings featuring walkways, trees, shrubs, places to sit, and sometimes shops. That just described that open area next to Rose's. It also may be a greenway in an industrial area where we've had buffer zones. And so I'm a little hesitant to define the public plaza as that. And yeah, does that make sense where I'm going with this? I think
we had a public plaza really defined before. They're just adding one, right?
They're defining public plaza because then the buffer would be parks and public plazas. Well, if you define a public plaza this way, you've now put 1,000 feet around any landscaped open space.
Good point.
So one solution to that is, it's not their fault. That's the definition the definition of a public plaza that the dictionary definition is.
Right.
So it's not necessarily something that we really add to the code. If it's a dictionary definition, we refer to that if there's some sort of ambiguity. So one solution to that would be a public plaza or public park. We could define, we could either just leave it silent and know that it's public plaza and public park, or we could add owned by the city of Sherwood or city-owned response to that
And that's how the public park is defined. So that's,
Because it's owned by the city.
yes, it says
That would be a way
operation or management of the city. I guess I was just concerned of we were setting a definition that then restricted the rest of the city completely, because there are open green spaces with amenities throughout both our commercial and industrial area. So if we go down this path, I think we need to revisit or remove the definition, or just add at the end of it the similar language that's in public park, which is under the control, operation, or management of the city or other governmental agency, so that we don't get ourselves in trouble.
Makes sense to me. Yeah.
So,
Just to be a little clearer with that, that's a good catch,
okay.
in my opinion.
So I also read in the newspaper, myself being quoted, that I had expressed concern about being in the industrial area. This is part of what makes these work sessions that we've done, to me, very valuable, because when I first heard commercial and industrial, I have, as been on the Planning Commission for a while, always heard the value of industrial land and not using it for retail. And that's what Metro has talked to us about on different occasions, about not using industrial for retail. And through the public process and the workshops and feedback from the Police Advisory Committee and Chief Growth, it was important to look at the industrial area as a viable alternative for medical marijuana dispensaries. And I liked how the Police Advisory Committee limited to 2,500 square feet for the size of it, because I think that helps. It's not just a secondary use to a large manufacturing, it is a secondary outlet within our community being placed here for not to become a destination point for a large draw of community. So I was in support of changing the size of the facility from 5,000 to 2,500. So, does anybody else have any comments about that 5,000 to 2,500 foot change or recommendation?
I was pretty much in complete agreement with the Police Advisory Board language.
Okay.
You know, they had it, and I don't know how we want to go about taking each particular item, whether it be hours and then location, zone, and all that kind of, I don't know how we want to address this. Do we just want to?
Maybe that's the best way, is as a commission, do we want a head nod of going through the version that the Police Advisory Committee recommended, and then go through each of the sections of the code that we'd be changing and see if we're in agreement or we want to make any adjustments to it? Does that seem reasonable? So I'm starting on page 63 of the complete packet. And we have definitions of medical marijuana and a mobile vendor. And
I had something on the mobile vendor. Let me see. I made it on my other page. Because just the definition language used for mobile. Where is that? A service establishment operated for from a licensed and movable vehicle that vends or sells food or drink or other retail item processed or prepared on site. What if it's not processed or prepared on site, but they just bring it? That still would be considered mobile to me.
that's a good point, because we're starting on page 63.
Just the definition of mobile vendor.
Right.
I know the intent is to be you know, I just think it makes it clear if we mention it's not just only if the item is on site, prepared and processed.
Right, because we would presume that the grow facilities would process and prepare it at the grow facility. So the mobile vendor part of that would just be selling it from a truck.
So I think it's not, it just needs to be enhanced just a smidge with a little bit different language there.
Would you just end it at items, after the word items,
Retail items.
period?
Yeah,
So that there's
That
no
would do it.
discussion of that.
Is everybody
Yeah, I
giving
think
a head nod?
it clearly talks about it being from a moving vehicle, so, or a
which is
movable
the intent of
vehicle.
that
Yeah.
statement, yes.
Okay, so I've seen a general consensus from the commission that if we put a period and remove the last part of that,
Not
mobile
that-
definition, mobile.
Not that dissimilar from the staff recommendation either.
Right, it's the exact, the blue language would be from both of
Yeah,
them.
it's the same.
Right,
It's just,
so if we're,
I just
yeah.
made my notes on the other one, so.
yeah, that's great, thank you very much. And then in the public plaza, we're gonna add operation city government. So we have additional language to the public plaza language, that it's under control, operation, or management of the city or other governmental agency. So on the bottom of page 64, this is the change that was recommended by the Police Advisory Committee in the commercial zone. They have changed it to be not permitted in any of the City of Sherwood commercial zones. That's page 64 of the staff report.
I was wondering why the staff report, based on the conversation we had with the open house we had, it seemed like the greatest majority of people were in just industrial, but the staff recommendation was to do both, which I would be in agreement with what the Police Advisory Board came up with just industrial. But I know that, wasn't it 54% versus 30-some?
Are you talking about the survey or the public?
The public meeting that we had
The public meeting,
seemed like they had been more, the majority was industrial, so.
I have that slide, just not, I didn't present it. Just let me.
There's some
It was in the staff
It
report
was,
that
first
the
page.
small group work sessions, the general consensus
Sorry.
was commercial and industrial, and the online survey was industrial
So,
only.
yeah, so this is how
Oh.
the vote came down.
Oh, is it? Okay, then.
Respondents, respondents were asked. Okay, so that's the 54% is respondents of the 180 surveys?
That's the online survey, correct. And this is the slide that she had for when we were at the work session.
Okay.
And
17 to 9.
So if you, referring to page 16 of the packet where you've got the third full paragraph there, respondents were asked, 54% supported dispensaries in industrial zones only. That was of the 180 people in the online survey, right?
That's correct.
Which in the actual public meeting, we had how many people?
It looks, that voted, it looks like 27.
Okay. So thinking that this might make a better representation of what people would feel.
Perhaps, or it could be people before most of the responses came before we had the public meeting, and a lot of times what we prepared for the online survey is limited information about zoning issues. So when we dug a little bit deeper at the public work session and discussed the alternatives, that generated this type of response. It's up to you to really
Sure.
gauge the sentiment across the community of which one is preferential.
And I know it's confusing just what the difference is between the zones if you are just
Right,
doing it on
exactly.
online.
So what is the purpose of a commercial zone, our retail zones, our commercial zones? We have, from a land use perspective, this is more of a pharmacy or retail type of use, and generally we've zoned that accordingly. We'd have to come up with, a reasonable restriction that it is better served in the industrial zone, really from that perspective. Now, from the police or a safety perspective, he thinks the industrial zone would be better for the community.
and that's where
That's where I go.
that's where, and the exact opposite of where I started, because obviously I was preserving industrial land when I came in here, but we do a size restriction, and Chief Growth had a very strong, compelling argument when he explained that this is contrary to how people are comparing it to a pharmacy. They are not a retail for-profit business that needs to be out on the street corner with big signs gathering in the public. And when I was looking at this, I thought, if this works in the industrial, it would be really easy to add commercial at a later date if it works well in our community. But it would be really hard to open it up to both, see how it works, and then say, oh, wait, we don't want it, but just in the industrial. So I thought it'd be easier if we started in one and then expanded than it would be to put it in both. So in starting in industrial, taking the recommendation of the Police Advisory Committee, the overwhelming respondents of the online surveys, I was more comfortable with industrial only.
As am I.
So we're on page 64 of the code. Do we have other comments about changing it from being permitted in the commercial to being restricted in the commercial?
Well, we have empty storefronts in the commercial zone now. We have a liquor store in the commercial zone now. It's run by the state. This is a medical dispensary. Happens to be a plant-based derivative, which a lot of pharmaceuticals are. We're responding, I think, in fear. By eliminating commercial with the buildings that are already there, and again, the landlord who rents the space we're not mandating that people rent the space to a medical marijuana facility. They still have the right to refuse. There are no buildings in the industrial zone to house this, so we're gonna have to somebody's gonna have to build the building and run the utilities and everything else. We're talking about a further delay, which could lead us to a potential lawsuit again, which we're trying to avoid. I have no objection to allowing commercial and/or industrial. Okay. The police already patrol in the commercial areas because those businesses need protection. I think we're adding potentially a lawsuit here, and we're also, I think we're responding in fear again.
Can you put up the slide that shows what other communities have done? And then if anybody else has, Michael or Chris or Russell, comments regarding the
Zoning?
zoning?
I just give a lot of credence to what the police think. And the chief's letter with regard to the advertising was something I hadn't thought about. I mean, if in fact it's something that they don't need to advertise to get additional business because their business isn't obtained that way,
And it's not
it
for
makes
profit.
sense. Then you add to that the possibility that at some point recreational and medical may be merged as they might be in Washington, then you have these locations already in the retail area. I don't know if that's something that people want in Sherwood. I didn't hear that a lot
I didn't,
at the meetings or at the.
I did hear, the one comment that is opposite of this is we don't need to hide it in the back corner like a dirty little secret, but we also don't need to advertise it in our community. So, we also, there are 2 more hearings, so we don't have to be stuck on this. We can do our best recommendation. The council certainly will be making their own decision. But I think it's easier for me to feel comfortable saying, let's start with one zone, see how it works and how it fits in our community, and then add to another zone. Again, relying on what Chief Growth has said and taking the Police Advisory Committee's recommendation.
The Tualatin manufacturing zone is only,
Industrial.
they're calling it the manufacturing zone, right?
Right.
That's their
That's
industrial
their
zone,
term for industrial
which
only.
is it in fact, as Commissioner Pearson said, just the new stuff coming out 124th, that's it?
Yeah, if you look at their map on the legislation that they passed online, it is a very small area right adjacent to Sherwood. So
So they don't want it.
they didn't want it, so they wanted Sherwood to have it.
That's essentially, and Newburgh is commercial, so that's just 99 probably for the most part.
It's really semantics because when you look at our busiest thoroughfare is either Tualatin Sherwood Road, which is where the industrial area is, or 99W, which is where our commercial zone is. I mean, they're both heavily traveled areas, so keeping it out of public view is going to be pretty impossible.
But we don't
on
have-
our busiest.
But we don't have to have it in a commercial zone next to the movie theater. If we start small and then grow into it and it works out well, we can then add it to the commercial zone.
Of course.
I don't know.
What do you think, Russell?
I think I've been thinking about this a lot.
I imagine you have.
It seems like a lot of I think Sherwood, we like to find ourselves in the middle. We don't like to be too extreme one way or the other. And I think maybe we feel like Tualatin might be a little too restrictive on, one end, and maybe others have gone, with the hours until 10 o'clock at night, they've gone the other direction. And I think Sherwood citizens are comfortable being right in the middle of that. So I think it's smart maybe to start with our industrial zone, as you mentioned, Sherwood, Tualatin Sherwood goes right through the middle of it. So, and a lot of those roads intersect at 99 or at Tualatin Sherwood and behind the scenes as well. So it's an easily trafficked area, easy to patrol, I think, for the police. And I think it's smart to start with one zone that's, in a very busy area. And then later, should we decide that we need to avoid a sticky situation, or because it's the will of the people, we can expand that. But I think, Commissioner Simpson is right. Once you open the gates, it's hard to shut the gate again. And I don't think that's too restrictive, and I don't think that's out of fear. I think it's out of just careful planning. So, and I think that puts us in kind of the middle where we like to be.
Chris and Michael, you're new, and that's a hard place to be.
If we restrict to the industrial zone, are there buildings for these facilities to locate? And if there aren't, and we restrict to that zone only, does that make it an unreasonable restriction for those businesses? Because then they have to burden the expense of building the entire infrastructure, and this is supposed to be a not-for-profit facility.
Well, the light industrial, they're off
I don't
Sherwood.
know what's there.
I would
so
say that, the proposed legislation is not to just the general industrial, it's to light industrial and general industrial.
And both.
All the
Yeah,
markets.
so
Well, I'll jump in real fast, Brad. I noticed on my trips, I usually take Herman the back way when I'm coming from downtown Portland. And there are lots of signs indicating there are spaces for lease in those light industrial plazas. Maybe it's a bay or two, but it seems like there are spaces. I don't know how big they are. That would be
Right.
an issue, but
And I would
Yeah.
just say that, I would echo that there are probably some spaces in both the general and light industrial that they could, a suite or something here or there, that they could locate into. And the only thing we would struggle with is making sure that they're not exceeding the 2,500 square feet. But if you think about where Two Kilts is, they don't have, some of those suites are small enough that,
Right, so in our,
and it's light industrial.
in our community, what I was referring to earlier, that Metro wanted us to not burn all of our light industrial with commercial activities, is what's across the street from Home Depot is our light industrial, and that looks very commercial in those bays. And the same with the Two Kilts. It is intended to be industrial land, but it was built to almost commercial-like standards. So all that stuff along Tualatin Sherwood Road and up 99 towards Home Depot is zoned industrial, and it is almost a commercial application set. So I don't think there's,
Like where Adams
think there's
Screen Print
opportunity.
is and all that in there is all, that's the light industrial there. And then the more industrial is
by DEQ
Bring up
and
by
Galbraith.
DEQ and then
Right.
down by Galbraith and by the DMV,
Mhm.
right?
right.
And there's space in there. The only place there might not be space is between them. I guess currently there's a lot of land there, but nothing
Right.
built. But there are buildings in this area.
Okay, so that help answer that question?
It does.
All right. Chris?
So I think one of the places I need a little bit of education is Commissioner Pearson was talking about how in the commercial areas, the landlords don't really have to lease the space to any of these. Is that the same kind of process in the industrial area? They just, can everyone just say, no, we don't want anyone here, and then you don't get anything? I mean, that's where I need that education, yeah.
Can a landowner?
Can a landowner decline to rent?
Unless they're a protected class.
That's a Chad question.
Yeah,
Chad.
Michelle's exactly right, as always.
There you go.
It's up to the landlord, as long as they're not doing it for an illegal reason, because someone's in a protected class, for example. I'm not going to rent to you because you're a female. That would be illegal. But saying that I'm not going to rent to you because the type of business you're engaged in is medical marijuana, which is prohibited by federal law, would not be illegal for a landlord to do, and the landlord has that right to do so. So if there's no landlords within Sherwood who want to rent to a medical marijuana dispensary, then there won't be any dispensaries located in the city.
But as I learned recently, it's not whether or not, it's whether we provide the opportunity.
Right.
So if we provide the opportunity and the landlord says, no, the city of Sherwood has complied with the regulations by offering it up within those zones.
Okay.
And, and I want to point out that that's the way I personally feel, that's not my intent. Whether it comes to Sherwood or not, I don't have a direct involvement in it because I don't have a need or know anybody that has a need, but there obviously is a need for it, and I don't want to heavily restrict it for those individuals. I want them to be able to get to what they need. As a citizen of Sherwood, they have every right to do that as people who don't need it. So I just think it's good planning to plan to pick and to carefully craft it, and then just not be too restrictive. As long as there's opportunity, then, if there's need, opportunity opens the door. That's what will happen, so,
Yeah, if it's
in demand.
and that light industrial guy hasn't rented his space out for a while,
Right.
he will,
He'll partition to 2,500 square feet, and then
there'll be,
that's what I
Tenant.
envision.
so, I hear Commissioner Pearson is in favor of retaining the original staff recommendation of permitted.
Yes.
Other commissioners, do we want to get a general head nod on taking the Police Advisory Committee recommendation as restricting it out of the commercial? Is that a yes?
That's what I think.
That would be mine.
Yes. Okay, so we will be retaining the Police Advisory Committee recommendation on page 64. On page 65, the recommended code change is the inclusion of medical marijuana dispensaries not exceeding 2,500 square feet, bless you, in light industrial and general industrial. So based on the previous discussion, is this a simple head nod to say that this is what we just discussed, that it would be a permitted use within light industrial and general industrial? And is there any further discussion regarding 5,000 versus 2,500 feet?
I have a question. I don't know how big one's supposed to be, or how small one's supposed to. I've never been in one, never seen one.
And this includes all the
I mean, is that
storage
enough
areas
room?
and-
I don't know. Marijuana doesn't simply takes up a lot of room, but I don't know. I mean, maybe the chief has some knowledge, or
Two other jurisdictions did 3,000, right?
was that the size? Was it
Yes,
3,000? Okay,
yes.
I'm comfortable if we're kind of in the middle. So
What is exact middle?
You like the middle?
I like
So-
the middle.
So is the middle the 3,000 feet and go along with everybody else, or 2,500?
I'm okay with that.
Maybe that,
Bump it up to 500 more.
To 3,000 square feet. That seems like a pretty safe spot.
that would be okay with me.
Yeah.
So we'll change page 64 to have 3,000 square feet. That is,
Unless someone here thinks 2,500 is like the magic number, I just really have no idea. I don't even know how big this
Sounds
room
like they
is,
just
so
halved it and went with
That's a
that.
30 by 100.
yeah,
I knew Alan would know that, so.
30 by
What size is this room?
I
100.
didn't say they'd be
Pretty
bad.
big space.
That's a
Is
big
it?
space.
That is a pretty big
30
space.
by 100 feet?
Well,
Big
again,
space.
Maybe
this
2,500 is
is,
enough.
yeah, I don't think it's,
Let's just pick a common number, then lawyers don't pick it out. They don't pick out common numbers. They pick out unique numbers.
2,500 square feet enough?
We don't do math.
Your billing
But you
department
do
does.
billing hours, right?
We have accountants for that.
I don't, whatever you think. I think 3,000 is good
I don't know
because
where
it's
the-
other jurisdictions have done the same thing.
The only
It's-
thing that I would point out is that
sensible.
state law prohibits the marijuana dispensary from being located at the same place as a grow facility. So it's not like the dispensaries are actually doing the growing there. So really what they're doing is just the retail sales. And I think a 3,000 square foot business would be more than large enough to engage in that kind of business.
Right, right.
It allows them to have their secured storage
Yeah.
area and everything
Because
like
it's,
that.
it's including every part of it.
You know, the area over in front of the community center, the new arts center,
Yeah.
that's 3,000 square feet.
That's a big.
Oh, that's an
That's pretty
ideal
big.
spot, too.
No, let's not start that again.
They're not going to be permitted there.
I'm only kidding.
It's a,
Remove that from the record.
It's not in the right zone.
Right, that's
Wait till
right.
retail to have that discussion.
Is
Right.
5,000 from the state? Is that where the 5,000
The
came from?
It's our existing incidental retail outlet space in light industrial.
Yeah,
So
we
it-
came up with that number. That wasn't the state.
State had no.
That's from
That's
light,
their
that's a light
maximum.
industrial
It's a maximum.
standard, maximum. If it's part of a retail space having to do with a manufacturing facility.
Okay.
That's Metro's
retail,
light
okay.
industrial,
And you
not
just
related.
Chris was just saying it's so big, which, and it is. But if you think about a landlord, if they only need 1,000 square feet, they're going to carve it up and put up a wall and give them 1,000 square feet, and then they have 2,000 square feet to lease to somebody else.
Right,
So it doesn't mean we're going to get a 3,000 foot super medical dispensary.
yeah.
it doesn't mean we're going to get that size, so.
Yeah,
It's,
'cause
it's
they-
up to 3,000.
Yes.
True,
yes.
So
okay.
that's good clarification.
Okay, so we're moving off of page 60. So page 66 has medical marijuana dispensary permits as a type 2. It's one little line, but we all went through the, so part of the public discussion was that a type 2 application for a medical marijuana dispensary was the appropriate place to do it because this should be an objective standard that staff can look at
Right.
something, and we don't want to have applicants place large
Right.
fees to come to a planning commission when there's just no need for that, when it's an
Right.
objective set of standards. So that's the page 66. Page 67. There is a lot of characteristics under our special use criteria. The big one being hours of operation. You know, I'm sure council will have other comments. Can you put up the slide that shows what other jurisdictions are doing?
It's mainly 8.
It's mainly 8 o'clock,
Mhm.
but they also have liquor stores that stay open later. I think when we first discussed this, the liquor store in Sherwood closes earlier than other things, so I don't have angst one way or the other. I think taking the recommendation to 7 o'clock and 8 o'clock on the weekends is 7,
starting
8,
at
9
10.
hours. 9 hours during the weekday and 10 hours on the weekends. So someone working an 8-hour shift has time before or after work to get there. Seems
So again, going with the police advisory board, saying 10 to 7 and then 10 to 8, is that Friday, Saturday?
So the city of Sherwood, the liquor stores open from 10:30 in the morning to 7:30 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and 10:30 to 8 p.m. Friday and Saturday, and it's closed on Sunday.
so we are not outside of what the liquor store is doing. That seems reasonable.
Why don't we just use the liquor store hours? Which are
Well,
almost-
those are the rules imposed by the local operator, so
They could change.
They could
they could change.
Oh, okay.
And it's their discretion.
Okay.
I don't know, making the argument for closed on Sunday might be challenging.
Yeah, that
Well,
might be.
I
don't
move
wanna
for
do-
middleness again. I think we should just go 10 to 8, 7 days a week.
7 days a week?
10 to 8, 7
Yeah.
days a week.
That way it's
Yep.
just, that's easy.
That seems
And that
sounds
puts us
good.
in line with everybody else.
That's a little more than,
I don't think we need to go later than that, because I think we are more of a bedroom community, but
All right.
so that's the
So-
same as Tualatin then too. Would they
So
take a
that
copy of it?
combines
Yeah.
hours of operation into one letter. A medical marijuana facility will be open,
7 to 8.
may not be open before 10 a.m. or after 8 p.m. 7 days a week.
Right, so they can close earlier if they want.
Oh, yes.
Again, that's just the max, okay.
Yeah. And 7 days a week. Are there any other blue underlined concerns on exterior lighting, landscaping, security
Tell me what
bars?
co-location means. Co-location prohibited.
So that's the
Underneath
heading
security.
for may not be located at the same address as a manufacturing facility, including a grow operation.
growing
it-
and
oh,
dispensing.
It
Gotcha.
can't be located at the
You
same
can't grow in the
location.
back room and sell in the front.
Right.
Or,
And you can't consume it on site as well.
well, the definition of co-location, is that obvious to everybody but me?
I think the
This
way
at the
this
same.
bullet points are working, the number 2 and the number 3 are headers, and then they're defined in 3A
Okay.
and
Yeah.
3B.
Oh, okay. Medical, okay. All right. I had
Okay,
something else.
That's page 67, because there's 68 has a new recommendation in green.
Gotcha.
So any other comments on page 67? All right, then 68, or 68, sorry, moving forward, the addition of a dispensary may not operate to deliver medical marijuana. I think that is,
So that concern was raised if there was a dispensary and someone was requesting delivery of medical marijuana, that they would not do that.
so Uber can't come out and deliver it for them.
That there's opportunities for
That's good.
caregivers to come in and they are authorized to obtain the medical marijuana, so.
Caregivers can, but
Can.
not a third-party
Not a
mobile
third party.
facility, a taxi cab or whatever.
So that's the reason, that was the thought behind that.
I think it's a great idea. I think it better defines it, so I think I appreciate the recommendation in including that.
I have a verbiage question on 5 if we're
Yep,
moving on.
moving on.
So, just in terms of definition, drive-through, walk-up, a medical marijuana dispensary may not have walk-up or drive-through sales access. I mean, just because you shouldn't refer to it as a window, in my opinion. It's like you basically are trying to say no walk-up or drive-through access,
That's good.
as
Thank you.
opposed
Well,
to saying a window, because they.
If they walk up
Door.
to the store, then they're walking up to the door, not just, so that's a typical window.
Well, a walk-up window or a drive-through, I just think it should be made not to have a.
Walk
have
up or drop,
a-
get rid of window.
And then,
You could say may not have access through a walk-up window or through a drive-through.
That works?
drive-through. Just.
A
okay.
walk-up or drive-through window. I mean, they're basically all windows.
Well, basically what you're saying is a drive-through dispensary or a
Right.
method of
It's just
dispensing.
semantics. I mean,
Yeah.
we all know what you wanted to say. I wrote it out as a medical dispensary may not have walk-up or drive-through sales access is what I was trying to be, is how I rewrote it, but.
Yeah, I
basically-
understand. You're being more precise, and I don't fault you for that, because it's a good idea to be as precise.
So
That's what, I know what you mean. You don't want somebody, here's your hamburgers, Mr. Pearson, you know?
Well, it's not, yeah.
Yeah.
Or a drive-through. It just sounds kind of lax language, my opinion.
Well, I
just
think
it
you take
sounds
the word
better.
window out, I mean, because somebody's got to get out of the car and walk up to the front of the door to get into the building.
I have,
And you take out the word window, and suddenly that's just somebody entering the front of the building to purchase. But you leave the word window in there, and that pretty much defines, I don't think it's too restrictive.
So a
Whatever you
medical
think.
marijuana dispensary may not have a walk-up window or a drive-through window
see, that's where,
access.
Drive-through
No?
access.
that's why I changed it, because I couldn't figure out how to make it, because you're a drive-through something. So it's like,
Or a
may not have walk-up or drive-through.
Well, it can have a
sales
drive-through.
access.
A walk-up
Or
or.
drive-through sales access.
Are we talking about transactions?
Chad, maybe you could speak to just.
Oh, transactions from a window or a drive-through?
Yeah.
Is what we're talking about.
And certainly, somebody could understand what your intent is behind this. The
Okay.
intent is not to allow people just to walk up to the outside of the building or drive up to the outside of the building and get their meds dispensed to them that way.
Okay.
It's up to you.
I just thought it sounded, I just think it sounds too casual the way it's written here. So I was
Walk up,
trying to make
walk
it
up or
sound
drive-through
more-
window.
It-
That's good.
Yeah.
It's a provision that's in the OARs currently that they can't do that, so this is just kind of added in there.
So
language.
is this a duplication of their language?
That's
I'll
what I'm
let you-
trying to verify.
It's really just semantics. It's not that big of a deal. I just, that
And
was
then
just my
actually,
opinion.
so that the code reads correctly, drive up, or the number 5, drive-through walk-up is the title, then there should be a return,
An
and
A.
then there should be a little A, and that
Right.
should be underneath it.
If
And
Jim
that'll
gets
all
that,
be
I
done
get
by
no
the
window.
municipal
Hey,
code.
you get no window, yes.
Okay.
She's gonna look up the ORS.
It's
because-
just,
Well, no, I
writing
agree,
code, I don't want to get another code update
yes.
in my book
Because
in 6 months from now.
She
'cause
doesn't
I-
want another code.
This is the time
Me
we're picking
neither.
this stuff apart.
You're right, it looks like it's a hanging sentence.
Yes.
So depending on what the state law says, it's obviously the best to mirror that language. But
Sure.
I think what you're
Yes.
getting at is you don't want them to engage in sales
Right.
through that type of thing. So you may want to say
Drive-through
something along the
sales.
lines of a medical marijuana dispensary may not engage in sales outside of the facility through means of a walk-up window or drive-through access.
There you go.
That's perfect.
That was it.
It kept the
All right,
window.
did you get all that language?
That was
Exactly.
recorded, wasn't it?
Did you just make that up? Did you win?
Yeah.
There'll be a quiz. I'm
just-
gonna ask you again to repeat it.
May not engage in sales outside of the facility or building through means such as a walk-up window or drive-through access.
Shall we don't want.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm spent. I can calm down.
Right, no tubes.
That's all.
That's perfect. And then on, oh, I'm gonna let him finish writing that.
And then on C, we're gonna amend C to reflect the previous comments about public park and
Public,
Right,
plaza?
maintained or operated or owned by.
well, it's public park or public plaza, and
Yeah.
then public plaza is defined as
Mhm.
run by a government
It referred
agency.
to the definition earlier. Yeah, okay.
Right, but I was waiting for staff to finish writing because I want to make sure that the numbering in 6, we have 6A and A.
Uh-oh.
Oh, and I see, it's may not be located within
dispensary.
1,000 feet of the following, and then we have little a's.
Mhm.
Okay, I get it.
Just the,
It's part of this.
it's part of the sentence. A
Yeah.
dispensary.
Yeah. So the only thing that is different in other jurisdictions is they've increased
1,000 feet.
the proximity restrictions to other dispensaries. For example,
Right,
Tualatin.
Tualatin,
Oh, no, wait,
3,000.
that's 3,000 feet in size.
No, they did the same thing. It's 3,000 feet.
It's on the previous slide.
Oh,
But yes.
okay, so
So Hillsboro's 2,000 feet and
3,000 feet.
3,000 feet from residential parks, schools, or libraries. It can be right next to Sherwood.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Got
that's
it.
pretty much why. Washington County went to 2,000, but as Chad said, they're also a lot bigger.
Right.
So that doesn't,
So we're not
so
gonna,
we might have trouble being
With that.
reasonable if we did that.
okay, so that was the end of the
That's it.
recommended code language.
Alright.
So, any other questions that, so I called Michelle and I just wanted to be clear that we addressed, the chief had written in his letter that he wanted us to adopt ORS 475-314 as municipal code. That was in his letter and I didn't understand whether or not we had addressed that in the staff report or in our code. And Michelle explained it to me really well that the intent of putting in on page 67 the characteristics that says on A2, registration and compliance with the Oregon Health Authority rules, a medical marijuana dispensary, blah, 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 under ORS card 475, failure to comply with the Oregon Health Authority regulations is a violation of this code. That, I believe, adequately addresses the chief's concern that by putting this in our code, then it becomes local rule. Now, because it's in our code, if they fail to comply with our code, the chief has jurisdiction. And so I just wanted to make sure that we had properly addressed other concerns that were in there. So,
I agree. I think it's sufficiently referenced in there.
okay. All right, any other questions, comments, or concerns? We went through all the pages and we staff made changes as we were going through it. Do you need us, when we make the motion for approval, to restate the changes, or just as
With modifications.
with modifications is sufficient?
I just have another request for a very small Scrivener's error that I caught earlier today in the definition of medical marijuana dispensary.
Page.
63.
Is it?
63, okay.
So on page 63, where it says a retail facility registered, it goes on to say that it's allowed to receive marijuana, immature marijuana, not plans, but plants.
Oh, there we go.
Yes.
So if we could change
You were
that.
waiting to see if Jean would catch that.
I hope
so.
she
missed it.
I missed it.
No one caught it,
failed it.
so.
I failed it.
And then in the staff report, I'd also ask that on page 14, in the proposal, I referenced chapter 1622, which is our commercial land uses. It should be, it says residential, but it's our commercial area. But that one, Jean did, Chair Simpson did catch.
Thank you. Sorry.
No, I didn't.
So staff is comfortable with how we've done our modifications through the processing. You've been able to track changes and get our head nods so that we, if we weren't all in agreement, we had a majority vote for all changes, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so is there a,
Do we need a motion to approve as amended?
so we
I can
have-
read it.
Wait,
Right.
Recommending.
I got that in my notes here.
I think Commissioner Griffin has some very specific language about
Right.
and the stating the city council special session on April 28th.
So the
Okay.
timing between there now, what happened? So technically, there's a little period of time where this doesn't apply? From May 1st to May?
But there's no chance that it's going to be
Cited.
impact, right?
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Staff's been in contact with the Oregon Health Authority, and their process is
60 days.
60
Okay.
days. And since there's
So
no current
nothing's gonna land in the
application
window,
in
right.
place within that window of time, we will be, have our code in place if council's able to approve through emergency approval on the May session, or their May hearing.
Okay.
Anything else?
Oh, no.
Okay. I move the Sherwood Planning Commission forward a recommendation of approval to the City Council for medical marijuana dispensary code amendments, PA 15-02, based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received in the analysis, findings, and conditions in the staff report with the stated modifications.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, everybody hear the motion that we approve for recommendation to the city council, PA 1502 medical marijuana dispensary code amendments as modified. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion passed. So again, the hearing for that first hearing will be a special session on April 28th. They'll take public testimony at that time. All right. That's the end of new business. Now we have planning commissioner announcements. Brad stole my thunder about the Sherwood West. We have had a great turnout. It's a 14 or 15 member committee. Everybody was there, I believe, at the last hearing, and then we had 27 people
Awesome.
and then Brad and Connie have been doing those one-on-one meetings with the thing. So it's going very well, and the engagement process has been really good. So I'm excited to see as the process moves forward. So if you have an opportunity to attend the May open house or May 21st, that would be a great opportunity to get more information about it. Does anybody else have any other commissioner announcements? When's your next play?
This summer, Bell Olson Park, we're going to do it the full weekend after the 4th. Into the Woods will open up Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So it's the weekend before Robin Hood Festival.
Fantastic.
So we hold auditions on Thursday and Friday of this week.
Really? Oh, wow. Fantastic. All right. Well, welcome to our new commissioners. Thank you for coming to our first very...
Just a personal note, I would very much like to commend Michelle for the yeoman effort that I know you put into this.
Yes.
We thank you for all you've done for us. We
Yes,
appreciate it.
very much so. Thank you. All right. What?
Wait,
There's nothing
You
on the
were-
agenda.
You were up here under staff announcements. We went by you already.
Push it, wait till it goes green. Julia, can you help him with this? There we go.
Just a reminder that we need a member of the Planning Commission to serve on the Local Trails Advisory Commission because Commissioner Clifford is no longer on the Planning Commission. So now would be a great time to appoint those that are not here or one of yourselves.
And this is for which?
It's a Local Trails Advisory Committee for the Cedar Creek Trail. So you would be participating with the public to help facilitate that process through the design and construction.
Very interesting.
How many meetings and when do the meetings start? Do you know?
So we're gearing up to kick off the project. It will likely be a year planning effort for the segment. Probably 3 to 4 meetings would be necessary
Over the year?
over the course of the year, and help review the plans and the exact pinpoint the location for the Cedar Creek Trail within the corridor.
Is there any other commissioner that's?
And if anybody has any questions about it, feel free to give me a call. We can talk about it more in depth, and I can give you a little bit more background information about the project.
I don't see anybody else making a lot of eye contact.
I think we have a
Chris?
volunteer.
I think we have a fantastic
We're usually pretty
volunteer.
quick to act around here, so.
So if there are,
Are you volunteering?
You asked a question.
Oh,
You
okay,
asked a question, you're automatically in.
yes.
You don't know that?
I said I was interested too.
So absolutely,
It was
so
clear.
he feels guilty because he got a free dinner tonight.
We're
there
gonna-
you go.
For
There
all
gonna
his
have lots of fun.
hours of service, which he
Yeah.
hasn't yet done, so.
So, if,
It's a fun group of people, so I'm
all right,
really
so a
ex-
vote
really
of the
excited to start.
commission, just a head nod, are we going to appoint Commissioner Flores to the Cedar Creek Trail? All right, head
Yes.
nod it is. Congratulations, Chris.
Thank
All right,
you for
thank you
doing
very
that.
much. All right, there being no further business, we are adjourned. Thank you very much. And thank you for the citizens